Strangely, the part of the finale that gets trimmed down the most here is the fight with Darth Maul. And that's really weird, since one of the things that everyone seems to love about this movie is that fight. Me personally, I'm not as into it. I hate how acrobatic and ninja-like the Jedi are in the prequels. It stops being a sword fight and turns into a big dance routine. The only thing that makes it epic or exciting is Duel of the Fates, which... okay, if there's one thing we can all agree on when it comes to all of Star Wars, it's that the music is friggin' awesome. Personally, I prefer lightsaber fights where we have a more personal connection with the characters, where they're really displaying their emotions. I don't need them doing fancy telekinetic tricks or jumping around everywhere to be impressive. And unfortunately, the movie doesn't have that. Qui-Gon is emotionless throughout the fight, and as established, he's just a black character for me. We've barely spent any time with Obi-Wan throughout the film, and Maul has one line of dialogue in it, 2 extras in the comic. I just don't care enough about it. Although, while I'm not big on the movie's version of this fight, I do admit the choreography is still a spectacle. The comics is not. I've said this before, but there's been a serious downgrade in comic book fight scenes in the last 20 years. Not just in this adaptation, but in superhero books too, where it's just random stills of a battle rather than sequential storytelling of a fight. It's the same here and does a disservice to the movie. I will say there is a bit of the fight that I do like, that the comic kind of butchers. There's a moment where the 3 characters are separated from one another by some force fields. Realizing they can't get to each other, Qui-Gon immediately sits down to start meditating, while Obi-Wan is in the back worried, and Darth Maul seethes and paces impatiently. No dialogue is spoken during this bit, and yet illustrates character and philosophy brilliantly by just their body language. Qui-Gon is a seasoned master of the Jedi, and the Jedi philosophy is peace, contemplation, defense. There's no reason he needs to have his lightsaber out, so he turns it off and calmly waits. He is at peace with the Force. Obi-Wan isn't experienced. He's young and still emotional. So he's worried about his master having to fight a Sith Lord single-handedly, so he's standing and anxious. The Sith philosophy emphasizes operating from a position of strength and anger. He's trying to intimidate Qui-Gon while also clearly annoyed that he can't slice up this Jedi that he hates. It's a wonderful bit of visual storytelling in a film that desperately needs more like it. And the comic reduces it to one panel. Qui-Gon doesn't have his lightsaber put away. In fact, it looks like he's about to accidentally cut into his own leg. We can't see Obi-Wan. And the force field looks like 2 energy beams that you could just duck under and continue the fight. Maybe that's why he still has his lightsaber out. He knows Maul can just reach under there and poke him with his if he doesn't. And thus, fight scene ensues, with battle droids and Geonosians emerging out of everywhere to fight. And pretty much it's all fight scenes until the end, but they're at least halfway decent ones. For starters, this is the first time we ever saw this many Jedi engaged in combat at once. Admittedly, it's so chaotic that it's hard to follow, but like the fight with Darth Maul last time, it's at least a spectacle to behold. Unfortunately, this also leads to a few stupid moments. For starters, there's Jango Fett. In the movie, he manages to kill a Jedi who climbs up to attack Dooku, but he doesn't even get that here. No, in both movie and comic, he leaps down into the fray! Why did you do that? You have no reason to go down there! You were fine! There is no reason to just jump down and give up your strategically advantageous position high above them to go right down to where people are shooting and slicing and there are rhino dinosaurs running around. I know we make fun of I have the high ground, but in fact the high ground is a good thing to have, especially for Jango Fett, who uses ranged weapons. But no, instead he gets knocked around right before Mace Windu chops his head off. Anakin even dual wields lightsabers against Dooku, but it's not enough. I already explained last time a disappointment with the more acrobatic fights of the prequels, but I'm actually okay with this fight against him. It's not perfect, but it's definitely more restrained than others, helped by the fact that that's actually Christopher Lee doing a lot of the swordplay. Not in the wide shots, but in closer shots, yes. In terms of fight choreography, it's nothing special, especially as the final boss battle of the movie, but that's because it's more of a warm-up for what's to come. The comic leaves out how in the movie they try to use other force powers on each other first, like Yoda redirecting his lightning back, or Dooku trying to collapse rocks on him, and just move straight into the lightsaber. Oh my god, look at this artwork! He's just waving it in front of his face! What the hell is this? Sweet merciful crap, it's not just one panel either! Look at this! They're just waving their lightsabers up and down or left and right! You know, there's a strong argument against this scene, and I admit I'm conflicted about it myself. But then here comes the comic adaptation to remind you, there's always a stupider idea. What's he gonna do next? Force pull over another lightsaber so it's in stereo? Size matters not, Master Yoda. Not compared to the power of the windmill! Eventually, Yoda starts doing more intense attacks. Not quite in the same way it's presented in the movie, but here Dooku also... Oh my god! He does grab Anakin's saber so he can dual wield to try to counter Yoda! I was kidding! So yeah, Yoda, that tiny little dude who's always walking around with a cane, can actually flip around and jump like he was in the Matrix.
I conserve my energy for moments like this.
I'm of two minds about this. Yes, it is cool to see Yoda doing this stuff. I may not like the more acrobatic fights of the prequels, but I get it. The Jedi at the height of their powers and abilities, and it's amazing to behold. My problem is that it seems to be at odds with how Yoda and the Force are supposed to be. This is my problem with that whole, this weapon is your life thing, or Yoda teaching lightsaber tactics at the Academy to little kids. Yoda's entire point in Empire Strikes Back is that the Jedi are not about the fighting. While they will engage in combat for freedom and justice in the name of the moon and all, their knowledge and understanding of the Force is through inner peace, harmony, serenity. Dooku says their conflict can't be resolved through mastery of the Force, but with their skills with a lightsaber, except a Jedi's mastery of the Force is not about lifting rocks.
I'm looking for a great warrior.
Force not make one great.
So making Yoda engage in a very physical duel like this, making him be the one who's teaching lightsaber fighting, and having Obi-Wan say, this weapon is your life, feels counter to his teachings.
Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter.
Although, I admit, him sitting and meditating to defeat Dooku wouldn't exactly make for good cinema. I don't know, I just feel like there was a middle ground between that and here's a fan service shot of Yoda being cool. Like, here's an idea. Maybe Dooku is the one who's constantly attacking with his lightsaber, but Yoda is so strong with the Force that he's constantly dodging. He's still as acrobatic as this, but he never actually makes an attack. Or like he has so strong with the Force, every time Dooku tries to attack, he can telekinetically stop it. So major change from the movie to the comic here, and an improvement in my opinion. In the comic, Obi-Wan climbs up the side of a ridge and encounters Grievous alone and decides to take him on. In the movie, he sneaks above where Grievous is, surrounded by hundreds of battle droids, and just drops down.
Hello there.
This is stupid on so many levels, and I am baffled by it. The line itself feels like it's meant to be clever or something, like he's leading into a joke. You know, something like this.
Excuse me. Can you help me? I'm a spy.
But even if you ignore that, why in God's name would you drop down like that? I know I make fun of the efficacy of the battle droids, but make no mistake, that many should kill him. And they have no reason not to. Dooku was the one who wanted to turn Obi-Wan, not Grievous. They treat this like it's some personal, long-established rivalry between the two, and that's why Obi-Wan thinks he'll be fine. But if you only watch the movies, Grievous has only just appeared, and there is no history between these two. They have no reason to not just slaughter him on the spot. It's mind-boggling that this is happening at all, and the ensuing fight does not help. In the comic, it makes sense. He's alone, unguarded, he thinks he can handle this. But in the movie, after easily dispatching Grievous's guards, Grievous unveils his very cool trick, actually having 4 arms, each one with a lightsaber, and Obi-Wan grins. Grins! Each one of those lightsabers is from a Jedi who was killed by Grievous. Even if you ignore the coughing fits he has, Grievous is such an advanced cyborg that he can hide extra limbs and is incredibly dexterous and can move in the vacuum of space without difficulty. Even if the other battle droids weren't there aiming guns, Grievous is not someone Obi-Wan should feel confident about taking on single-handedly. And certainly not grin at the sight of 4 lightsabers wielded by this guy ready to slice him apart. Comic version, no facial reaction from him, just the really cool image of Grievous wielding those sabers while still wearing the cape. That's actually pretty damn badass. Attack, Kenobi! I have been trained in your Jedi arts by Count Dooku himself. Behold, Jedi, the power of the windmill! I'm not even kidding. In the movie, he has two of his arms rapidly spinning the blades like a fan, and then stops for some reason. Thus we get to Palpatine pulling out a red lightsaber and fighting them. Like with Yoda last time, I am not fond of Palpatine leaping around and wielding a lightsaber. At least with Yoda, even if you ignore the philosophical implications of him fighting with one, it's kinda cool to see him so acrobatic and dexterous and whatnot. Not so much with Palpatine. He's wearing this incredibly bulky outfit, and yet he's spinning around in the air and somehow moving so fast as to kill 3 of them so quickly, and it just looks absolutely ridiculous. It also doesn't help that, yet again, for all the bluster about these dark, evil powers and abilities and mastery of the Force and stuff, it just comes down to some old dude waving around a laser sword. The comic at least cuts down the length of it, and since it's just motion lines, it doesn't look as silly. It's still a little silly, admittedly. It also helps that it didn't include a few lines that have become mimetic.
I am the Senate. It's treason, then. No. 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 You must go!
Oh, and yeah, the fight between Yoda and Sidious is the most over-the-top, ridiculous nonsense. It looked bad enough with Sidious's flips against Mace Windu, but now it's even more awkward when he's wearing huge, bulky robes everywhere, and Yoda's just a tiny little goblin jumping around. The comic has the good sense to skip the part where they start tossing those spinning Senate discs at each other, and Yoda just falls down because of Force lightning that he apparently forgot how to deflect from the last movie. And back over to the much more interesting fight. As I've said, I much prefer lightsaber fights where we have a more emotional connection to the characters. We don't need one with the villain necessarily, but it helps, and this one is definitely up there. 2 best friends now turned into enemies. Really, my problem with it is just how over the top it goes. They're zipping around everywhere, hanging from tall towers, balancing on beams. It's trying to make it seem like the most epic confrontation in the history of ever, but it's not really helped by it intercutting with the Yoda and Sidious fight. Fortunately, the comic changes that by having the Sidious fight over and done with fairly quickly so we can focus on Anakin versus Obi-Wan and cut down to about 3 or 4 pages. Probably could have gone on longer, especially since the movies went on for quite a bit long, probably longer than it needs to be thanks to the interspersing, but here it's a good length. When I first saw this, I was less impressed with the fight because the two had the same lightsaber color, so it didn't seem as visually interesting to me and made it harder to follow who was doing what. As an adult, I actually appreciate it a lot more, especially the comics version, because everything here is so deeply red and yellow and dark, but then there are these 2 blue sabers that help stand out. Unfortunately, the movie suffers a bit from this, because while it's easier to see the sabers, Anakin and Obi-Wan's own clothes end up blending into everything, which again makes it harder to tell what's happening in the fight, not helped by the screen flashing each time the sabers collide. It's not impossible to follow, but it kinda wears on the eyes a bit.